Hi, and welcome to this week's blog audio. My name is Jackie Ford, and I hope you enjoy either reading or listening to this audio or blog, which is based on my experiences as a coach living in Scotland but working globally. Have you ever noticed how the words we use can subtly keep us trapped in our experiences, even when we think we've moved on? We often use language like, I'm stuck. I'll never be free of this. Or this pain is just part of who I am. Without realizing it, these words can reinforce the idea that we are defined by our trauma. The trauma isn't just a mental or emotional burden, it lives in the body. And sometimes the very words we use keep us hypnotized by it. Healing requires that we not only address the body and mind, but also break free from the language patterns that are holding us back. There is an unseen impact with trauma and the language of being stuck. Let me introduce you to Clare. She came to see me after years of traditional therapy, believing she had processed her trauma. But she constantly said things like, "Oh, I'm still carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, Jackie." And sure enough, she physically felt that weight in her body. Her shoulders were always tight and tense. Claire's language kept reinforcing the idea that she was stuck in her trauma, and because of that, her body hadn't let go of it. Once we began some somatic work combined with addressing her language, Claire's story started to shift. Instead of saying, I can't let this go, we worked on language that acknowledged her resilience. Her body responded to this new story, and the tension in her shoulders slowly released, and she finally felt a sense of lightness, both mentally and physically. The words we choose matter. They hypnotize us into believing that trauma defines us, that healing is out of reach, or that we're broken. And when we change our language and address how trauma is stored in the body, we open the door to real lasting healing. Talking therapy alone often falls short. You see, talking therapy helps us gain insight into our thoughts and emotions, but it often focuses on the conscious mind, replaying the same stories, reinforcing the same beliefs, and sometimes unknowingly keeping us stuck. Take Jessica, for example, another one of my clients. She had spent years talking about her trauma, but she kept saying things like, I'm always going to be anxious, or my body is permanently wired to panic. And these repeated patterns of thought and language kept her locked in a state of fear and anticipation, even when there was no immediate threat. Once we started working on both her body's reactions and the language she used, things shifted. By integrating somatic work with insight from the three principles, which explain how our thoughts shape our experience in real time, Jessa began to see that her anxiety wasn't permanent or inevitable. Her panic wasn't who she was, but a temporary reaction to her current thinking. As her understanding deepened, her body began to relax, and the language she used about herself became gentler and more empowering. There is power to language, and words can keep us trapped. Trauma isn't just an event that happened in the past, it's a story we tell ourselves over and over. It can become ingrained in how we speak to and about ourselves. Words like I'm damaged, I'm stuck, or I'll never heal reinforce the idea that trauma is something we can never escape. These phrases become a kind of self hypnosis, creating the illusion that we are powerless to change. But the truth is, we are always capable of transformation. Take David, for example, another one of my clients. He had been carrying the emotional pain of losing a loved one in a traumatic accident. His language reflected his belief that he was broken by the event. I'll never be the same, he would say. This belief kept the trauma alive in his body, and he felt tightness in his chest and a lump in his throat whenever he thought about the loss. Once David started exploring the three principles, he had an insight. His pain wasn't coming from the trauma itself, but from the story he was telling himself about it. In that moment, he realized that his thoughts, not the event, were creating his current experience. And as David began to see his situation differently, his language changed. He stopped saying, "I'll never be the same," and started acknowledging his capacity for healing. His body followed, and the physical symptoms that had plagued him for years began to ease. With the three principles, we can rewrite the narrative and enjoy embodied healing. The principles offer us a deeper understanding of how our experience of life is created. Our feelings don't come from past trauma or circumstances, they come from our thoughts in the moment. And when we start to see this, the stories we tell ourselves about our trauma start to lose their grip on us. We realise that we're not broken or stuck. We're just experiencing thought, and that thought can change. Another client, Michael, struggled with anger and shame after a painful divorce, and this understanding was a complete game changer for him. He used to tell himself, "I'll never get over this," and this language kept him trapped in the emotions of anger and grief. But as he gained insight into the three principles, he realised his feelings weren't permanent. They were just the result of his current thinking. And when he began to let go of the story that was keeping him angry, his body began to relax as well. It's all about embodied healing, releasing trauma from the body and breaking free from our language patterns and our psychological patterns that we've had for years. Healing from trauma involves more than just changing our words or thoughts. It requires engaging our bodies too. Our bodies often carry the weight of the language we use, and they need to be released physically to truly heal. So we can integrate this approach through somatic therapies by tuning into the body through somatic experiencing. We can release the physical tension that language patterns reinforce. For Amanda, who often said she felt on edge or locked up, these physical sensations mirrored her language. Once we worked with her and our body through somatic techniques, it allowed her to breathe and release. And with that, she stopped feeling the constant tension and started describing her experience with more openness and freedom. Using breathwork and trauma-informed movement, because breath is the bridge between the mind and the body. Many of us breathe so shallowly or hold our breath without realising it, especially when trauma is involved. And any of you out there who have worked with me, you know that's one of the first things I'm going to point out to you. How you hold your breath or how you breathe so shallowly that you are actually causing your brain to be hypoxic. And by hypoxic, I mean it's not getting enough oxygen. And when a brain doesn't get enough oxygen, it kind of doesn't work the way it's meant to work. Lisa, another client, always described her trauma as being suffocating, and her shallow breath reflected that. Through breathwork, she learned to release her body's tight grip on the trauma, which helped shift her language. She no longer felt trapped in the pain, but free to breathe more fully, more physically and emotionally. The three principles in action help us see that our experience of trauma is created in the moment through thought. And when we realise that we are not defined by our past or the language we've used to describe it, we can start to rewrite the story. And this realisation allows the body to relax and let go of the physical tension it's been holding on to. For Michael, who I spoke about a couple of minutes ago, his insight was transformative. Not only did his mind become freer, but his body followed as anger and physical tension just started to dissipate and disappear. And when we also break the hypnotic language, we can begin to challenge the language patterns that keep us stuck. Instead of saying I'm broken or I can't heal, we can start to use language that reflects our true capacity for resilience. Even small shifts, like replacing "I'll never get over this" with "I'm in the process of healing," can create profound changes in both your mind and your body. This is a new path to healing, because true healing from trauma isn't just about processing the past. It's about breaking free from the stories, the language, and physical patterns that keep us stuck and trapped. By integrating body-based therapies with the insight of the three principles and challenging the language that holds us back, we can finally release the weight of trauma and experience true healing. So if you are ready to explore how this combined approach can help you break free from the language and physical patterns of trauma, I'd really love to support you. So feel free to drop me an email at jackie@jackieford.com or schedule a call to discuss your next steps towards freedom and healing. So much love, and I look forward to speaking to you